أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah, today we will study and discuss the first battle that occurred in the history of Islam. And contrary to popular belief, it is not the Battle of Badr. So there was a lesser or smaller event, a ghazwa that occurred before the Battle of Badr, and which is called the Ghazwa of Nakhla. And today, inshallah, we will discuss that particular incident. And this incident, of course, is referred to or alluded to in Surah Al-Baqarah in ayah number 217. As you know, last week we had covered ayah number 216, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had commanded the Muslims to fight to defend Islam. So the rules of jihad had started to be revealed. And 217 is in regards to a specific incident that occurred in regards to the Ghazwat al-Nakhla. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes in this ayah, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الشَّهْرِ الْحَرَامِ. They ask you about the sacred months, قِتَالٍ فِيهِ, about the matter of fighting in the sacred months. Right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ, say to them, قِتَالٌ فِي كَبِيرٍ. Fighting in the months of the sacred months are a very bad deed. However, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, if we can look at this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they ask you concerning fighting in the sacred months, say fighting therein is a great transgression, but a greater transgression with Allah is to prevent mankind from following the way of Allah, to disbelieve in Him, to prevent access to the Masjid al-Haram, and to drive out its inhabitants, and fitna is worse than killing. And they would not cease to fight you until they turn you back from your religion if they can. And whoever of you turns back from his religion and dies as a disbeliever, then his deeds will be lost in this life and in the hereafter, and they will be the dwellers of the fire, they will abide therein forever. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. So you may be wondering, so what triggered this particular set of ayat to come down in this particular set of instructions? The situation is as follows. So as you know, the Rasulullah ﷺ lived in Mecca for 13 years as the Rasulullah ﷺ. Of course, he lived in Mecca for 40 years before that. So in these 13 years after he declared himself a prophet, the Quraysh in general, the ruling authority or the powers that be, chose to not accept this religion, and they chose to oppress and harass and torture the followers of this religion, and towards the end they attempted to murder Muhammad ﷺ. And in any case, by the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Muslims migrated from Mecca to Medina. And when they migrated from Mecca to Medina, they were forced to leave behind all their wealth, their property, their possession, their houses, in many cases their husbands or their wives and their children. And so this situation was very, very dire. And it actually got so bad that when the people left from Mecca to Medina, the Quraysh would walk to their house and seize and confiscate their homes. And some of the Quraysh, some of the Muslims who were departing from Mecca to Medina, depending on how well off they were or how many family they had or tribes to protect themselves, if they did not, and most of them did not, they would literally accost them on the way out. And if they could, they would rob them or kill them or try to arrest them and bring them back. Right? So all this were happening in the background. So by the time a Muslim from Mecca enters Medina, on average, he enters with the shirt on his back. I mean, literally, there were Sahaba who entered Medina, and they entered without shoes on their feet. There were literally people who, they took away their camel, they took away their food, they took away their extra change of clothing, they took away their money. Like in the case of Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu anh, he literally entered barefoot with his feet bleeding. And he was a well-off person. He was not wealthy at that time, but he was well-off. He was like upper middle class kind of person. They took away everything. And literally when he entered, he had one qamis. It's like one thawb, that's it, one garment. Nothing else. Right? And this was the condition of the average Muslim. This is, by the way, one of the reasons why the Rasulullah ﷺ created the muwakha, the brotherhood among the Muhajirin and the Ansar, to give protection and help each other and grow together, and to create a bond of long-term friendship, right? Because the people were entering in such desperate situations. Now, the actions of the people of Mecca were a violation of the standard traditional Arab tribal rules. Under the Arab tribal rules, if I am a member of your tribe, you have a duty to defend me. If somebody attacks me, and no matter what, you cannot be the one attacking me. It doesn't work like this. If you and I have a fight, you can take me to the chief of the tribe and we have to resolve it that way. This is the standard Arab tribal rule in those days. So the behavior of the Quraysh to the Muslims violated all norms of Arab civility that existed from time immemorial. So the Quraysh under any standard were in violation. And their wealth they had been seizing the wealth of the Muslims. So the Rasulullah ﷺ, as an intentional campaign of response to the evils conducted by the Quraysh, also ran an equivalent campaign of economic damage or sanctions against the Quraysh. Okay, so the Quraysh had done sanctions against the Muslims for 3 years. They had boycotted them in a valley and almost starved many of them to death, including Khadija radiallahu anha. Okay, so the Rasulullah ﷺ, when all the wealth of the Muslims had been seized and confiscated, their citizenship had been stripped of them, they have been expelled from their homelands, then the Rasulullah ﷺ also conducted an economic campaign against the Quraysh. So happens that the Quraysh economic engine is what? Trade, business. And the trade was very simple. They would load caravans, they would take camels and go to Yemen, and they would bring things from Yemen that people in India were selling in Yemen, and they would bring them to Mecca, and then they would go from Mecca to Syria, and they would sell it to the Syrians. And this was, by the way, the Mecca was in the link, was at the heart of a trade route between India and the Roman Empire. See what I'm saying? Because on the two ends there are ships. Between India and Yemen there are ships, and once you cross from the Syrian, what is now called the Lebanese coast, see what I'm saying? To the Roman Empire there are ships. In the middle there is a land route, and that land route is very dangerous. Okay, you cannot travel with wealthy things, with expensive things on land and not have bandits rob you and kill you. It's a very dangerous business. The Quraysh were able to do this because they are the custodians of the Kaaba. You see what I'm saying? And because all the Arab tribes come to visit Mecca for Hajj, then they are afraid to attack a Quraysh caravan. So the caravans of the Quraysh pass unmolested through the desert. Caravans of the non-Quraysh get robbed. If not by this tribe, then by that tribe. If not by that tribe, that's some other tribe. Somebody will rob it. So at a practical level, the only group that can actually take merchandise from Yemen to Syria are the Quraysh of Mecca. This is the condition that has existed for many hundred years. This is the point that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was making in Surah Al-Quraysh. لِإِلَافِ قُرَيْشِ إِلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ فَلْيَعْبُدْ رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. Allah is saying, look at the Quraysh, woe to them. And it is Allah who is the Rabb هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. He is the Lord of this house. It is because of this house that they are able to pass unmolested in their summer and their winter journeys. You see what I'm saying? And Allah is saying, فَلْيَعْبُدْ رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. Then why do they not worship the Lord of this house? Why they worship some other Lord? It doesn't make sense. You see what I'm saying? So the economic engine of Mecca was trade. They were the middlemen in international trade. So now the Quraysh had done something different than this. Their superiority or their ability to deal with all the Arab tribes depended on them being custodians of the house of Allah, and them making sure every group of people had access to the house of Allah. And this situation continued for many hundred years until they stopped one group of people from accessing the house of Allah. Which group was this? The Muslims. Guess what the Muslims did in retaliation for that? Your caravans are no longer safe. You're going to pass over territory controlled by Yathrib, by Medina, your caravans will be arrested. Your caravans will be seized, your caravans will be confiscated. You are no longer safe. And so in the past, what they would do from Mecca to Syria, they would pass over Yathrib. This, by the way, is why the Rasulullah's grandmother, why the Rasulullah's mother is originally from Yathrib. There are long-standing trade links. This is why the grandfather or the great-grandfather of the Rasulullah was brought up in Yathrib, because this was on the trade route. So the Rasulullah blocked it. He did it very simply. He sent Muslims in Muslim scouts to scout through the land. Wherever there is a Quraysh caravan, they stopped it, they took the wealth and brought it back to Medina. Guys, go back home. This wealth is ours. What do you mean you cannot rob us? No, we are taking back the wealth you have stolen from us. You have stolen the wealth of Muslims, and we are taking back the wealth you took. You see what I'm saying? And so this is what the Rasulullah intentionally did that. So then what happened is they used to go on top of Medina territory. Then the Quraysh started bypassing it. They'd go around it. Then the Rasulullah went out and made a treaty with the tribe right next to him. And then he attacked the caravans on that land also. Then they would bypass him a little bit more. Okay, so no problem, the Rasulullah went and made a treaty with that tribe also. And then he attacks their caravan. So we're going to shut down your business. You see what I'm saying? As you did that to us, we're going to teach you a lesson. Fair is fair. So all these things happened before the Battle of Badr. Okay, because the Rasulullah he's not here to play games. You have taken action, there are now going to be consequences. You see what I'm saying? So it occurred that the Rasulullah assembled an expedition, a small group of people, less than a dozen. And he commanded them to go out and harass the trading caravans of the Quraysh. It's in this background that the Ghazwa of Nakhla occurs. Okay. Now, one thing to be very clear on, there is a reason why the Muslim historians, some Muslim historians, call the Battle of Badr the first battle of Islam, because this was the first battle where the Muhajirin and the Ansar fought together against the enemies of Islam. Before that, the Rasulullah ﷺ only allowed the Muhajirin to go in these expeditions. He did not allow any Ansar to attend. The Battle of Nakhla, only the people who went are Muhajirin, and they are from Mecca, and much more importantly, they are from the Quraysh tribe. So the Rasulullah ﷺ would not even allow someone from Mecca like Bilal radiallahu an, because under the Meccan rules of the old Arab, ancient Arab rules, Bilal bin Rabah radiallahu an, as a Habashi, is not considered a citizen of Mecca. It was more like a green card. Do you see what I'm saying? Or even less than that. He was a slave, right? But even someone like Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu an, I mean, he was never a slave, but he was not considered a full-fledged citizen by the big shots of Mecca. Of course, for us, he is a great scholar and great teacher and great alim, great Sahabi, right? So, but the point I'm trying to tell you is that Rasulullah ﷺ intentionally did not allow in any of these ghazawat, in any of these expeditions, anyone to go who was not from the Quraysh tribe. Who can tell me what is the significance of this rule?
Because they are allowed to go on the Nakhlas because they have been robbed and
Bilal was robbed.
Taking the money, so that's why they are taking their share basically by doing that.
Yeah, but also Abdurrahman bin Auf was oppressed. They robbed him. Abdullah bin Mas'ud was robbed. Bilal bin Rabah they almost tried to rob him of his life. Right? Why would these people not be allowed to participate?
Because there were no local like nationalists with the word doing.
So the actions of the Quraysh were illegal under Arab tribal custom. So as long as no one outside the Quraysh tribe attacked a Quraysh caravan, this fight is an intra-tribe fight. It's a fight within your tribe. You cannot bring outsiders to help you. And as long as it is within the tribe, every action, whether the Muslims win or whether the Muslims lose, has the effect of proving to the world that the Quraysh are not able to control their own tribe. See that? You assume the American government can police inside the borders of America. It's an assumption. If it can't, well, then stop telling us what to do. Go police yourself. You see what? The Rasulullah ﷺ intentionally did that. And see, this is the thing. We sometimes do not realize the intelligence and wisdom with which the Rasulullah ﷺ understood and deployed these political facts. The fact of the matter is the Arab supremacy that the Quraysh have over all the Arabs rests on the claim that they are untouchable. Well, their tribe is proving that they are very touchable. You are not superior. The Rasulullah ﷺ is intentionally eroding the extra value of this name. He's damaging their brand intentionally. See what I'm saying? Second, he is preventing and closing the door for non-Quraysh militants to participate in this conflict. And this strategy was successful, by the way, for 5 years. Non-Quraysh did not intervene in this fight until the Battle of Ahzab, 5 years later. Do you see this point? So this is an important distinction that Rasulullah SAW intentionally did to reduce the number of weapons and soldiers on the other side. Yeah, very calculated, right? So in the Ghazwa of Nakhla, the Rasulullah SAW commanded one of the Sahaba, if I'm not mistaken, he commanded Abu Ubaidah. Yeah, he commanded Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah to lead a group of men and to go out. And this time the Rasulullah ﷺ gave very interesting instructions. So usually, by the way, when he would assemble a group of 3 or 5 or 10 or 20 men, he would give them instructions and he would not tell the rest of the Muslims the instructions. So he would take the men who are going out, he would have a private meeting with them and say, go in this direction. The rest of the Muslims are not allowed to know what he told them. Right? By the way, this is another sunnah we learn from the Rasulullah ﷺ, is to maintain the security of your operations. You only release the amount of information you need to release. You don't have to tell everybody everything. It's like, yeah, but what do you have to hide? It doesn't matter. Do you have a need to know it? No. Then I'm not going to tell you. You see this principle? So, but this time the Rasulullah ﷺ gave a more interesting instruction. He commanded the Sahaba, he said to them, assemble yourselves, and Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah is your leader. And you will march out and go in this direction. And after you have reached the following destination, you will open my letter. And I have new instructions for you inside this letter. Okay, so now this is a multi-day expedition. It's a long expedition. They are going significantly outside the border of Medina. Okay, so Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, by the way, just so you know from this incident, it doesn't sound like it, but he is one of the greatest generals of Islam. But Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, when he was assigned this task, then he started crying. The Rasulullah ﷺ said, why are you crying? And he said, the idea or the thought that I will be separated from you for many, many days is causing me pain in my heart. But by the way, just so we are clear, this is not at all related to his courage or lack. No, he's a very courageous person, including his actions against the Romans and the Persians. He did many, many things. Okay? But the idea that he would be separated from the Rasulullah ﷺ was very painful to him, so he could not handle that. So the Rasulullah ﷺ removed him from command. He said, okay, you don't have to go. And the Rasulullah ﷺ assigned Abdullah bin Jahash radiallahu an to lead this expedition. And he instructed Abdullah bin Jahash the following: take your men and go in this direction until you reach such and such a destination. After you reach this destination, open this letter of mine. Do not open this letter until you get there. Then open my instructions and read my instructions to all your men, but do not force any of them to join you. Give them the choice. Your men have the choice of coming back, or your men have the choice of following the instructions on the letter. This is the Rasulullah ﷺ's command, right? So he took the letter, took salam from the Rasulullah ﷺ, they left. Then they went to their appointed destination, and Abdullah bin Jahash radiallahu anh opened the letter. And the letter said, by the way, change direction. By the way, why would the Rasulullah ﷺ do that? Why would he send them in one direction and then make them go the other direction? There are probably spies in Medina. The Quraysh by this time have figured out that Muhammad ﷺ is annoying them a lot and that they need to watch which direction his soldiers go. Very simple. This is why the Rasulullah ﷺ gave this very complicated set of instructions, right? So then Abdullah bin Jahash radiallahu anh opened the instructions, he read the letter, and he read the letter out loud to his companions, to his team, and said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has commanded me not to force any of you to join me. If any of you want to come, come. If you don't, you can go back to Medina. As for me, I'm here for Shahada, so I'm going to listen to what the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. So each and every single person in that team also agreed to continue with the mission. Is this point clear? So nobody went back. Now, the instructions of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is to go to this other place and observe. Observe the movements of the Quraysh. Observe their trade movements. Okay, and then it occurred. So they went to that place, and the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had very good instructions. He had very good intelligence, not instruction. He had very good intelligence. He himself had people who were giving him information about the movements of the Quraysh and each and every single of their trade caravans. So the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would know that a trade caravan of the Quraysh has departed from Syria now. It is expected to arrive in 3 days here. They are going in this direction, and they are going in that direction, and they are carrying the following things, and so on and so forth. So the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was receiving all these intelligence. Okay. And he was using this information to harass the Quraysh. So this, it turns out, from the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's planning, was to be an intelligence gathering mission. You're not to engage. You have not been given the command to fight. Your instructions are observe. See what I'm saying? So then the people went and they started observing. They are waiting and lying in wait, and then sure enough the caravan of the Quraysh passed. And this is an interesting situation, because the caravan of the Quraysh, the records tell us that it was carrying raisins and food and a few trade items for the Quraysh. Okay, and this is important because already the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been doing blockading for the Quraysh, and food supplies are in a bad situation in Mecca. The price of food is going up. It's what happens, by the way, when you lodge into economic warfare, these things happen. Okay, and this caravan is carrying food supplies for Mecca. It so happened that was the last day of Rajab. Rajab, as you know, is one of the 4 sacred months where fighting is prohibited in Islam. Okay, so the next day, tomorrow, will not be Rajab anymore. Tomorrow will be a non-sacred month and fighting is permitted. Today is Rajab and fighting is not permitted. You see what I'm saying? Now, there is one more problem in this picture. There was a moon sighting problem. So, oh, we thought only moon sighting happens in America. No. There was a moon sighting problem because they did not know, has the new month come or has not come. No, they were all following local sighting at that time. They were all in one locality, right? There was no global sighting, local sighting issue. There is no fiqh council problems there. The problem is that the people themselves, now of course they do not have telephone or internet or Facebook or Twitter. They cannot just tweet and ask somebody. They themselves, because the night was slightly cloudy, they could not see whether the moon had arisen or not in their locality. That small group did not know, as they are observing the caravan, are we in Rajab or are we not in Rajab? They themselves did not know. And as they are observing the caravan, the caravan is moving, it's not stopping. It's like, hey, attack us here. They're not going to stop, right? The Quraysh themselves are under pressure. They have to get to Mecca fast, right? And they are moving. The problem is that if they wait one extra day, the caravan will cross into the borders of Mecca and will no longer be vulnerable. Do I attack now or do I not attack now? So this is the core decision that Abdullah bin Jahash radiallahu an and his team encountered. And since they were not sure if they were in Rajab or not, and they thought we are probably not in Rajab anymore, and because clearly confiscating this caravan is very important, because that's what the Rasulullah has already been doing, then they decided we are going to go forth, and because we cannot wait until they enter Mecca to attack them, then they made an ijtihad, they decided to attack the caravan. In the process of attacking the caravan, one of the people attempted to defend the caravan and he got killed. The Muslims killed a man in armed conflict in the sacred month of Rajab. Another of the people in the caravan ran away and ran to Mecca and carried the news. And a third of the caravan people, the Muslims arrested him. They brought him to Medina. They brought all the camels and all the goods and everything they brought to Medina. They came and gave it to the Rasulullah. Now when the Rasulullah saw this, he became very, very angry. His face became red. He said, "This is not what I commanded you to do." And when they gave the wealth to the Rasulullah, he refused to take it. He said, "Nope, I did not ask you to do this." He raised his hands to the sky and he said, "Oh Allah, be witness, I did not command this." The condition of this army and how they were treated by the Muslims was not very good. The entire Muslim community became very, very angry with this army. And the Quraysh started a massive publicity campaign against the Muslims. Oh, these Muslims, they're the sacred ones. See, they do not respect any religious values. They have no values. They are fighters. They're terrorists. They're killers. They're murderers. Oh wait, that's Fox News. Oh, same, no difference. It's a huge, massive campaign. All of Islam is tarnished by the actions of less than 12 people. Everyone is being badmouthed because of it. This is the circumstance under which this ayah was revealed. No, there are significant differences. We should analyze what are the similarities and differences. Right? Did you guys know this story? This is a new story for most of you. Yeah, so this is the first battle of Islam, before Badr. It was after this, the Battle of Badr became much more life and death for the Quraysh. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then revealed this ayah, "They ask you concerning fighting in the sacred months. Tell them, fighting in the sacred months is a great transgression with Allah. But even greater of a crime in the sight of Allah is to prevent people from following the path of Allah, and to disbelieve in Allah, and to prevent people from entering the Masjid al-Haram, and to expel the inhabitants of this place out of this place. These things are much worse than the killing. And the fitna is worse than the killing. The fitna you have caused, you the Quraysh have caused, is worse than the killing that the Muslims have done." And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Muslims, "And they will never stop fighting you until they turn you back from your religion, if they can. And remember, whoever of you turns back from your religion and dies as a kafir, then his deeds will be lost in the dunya and the akhirah." And for him, he will be forever in Jahannam, and he will be there forever. Yes.
So, according to this ayah, they endorse the action.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala endorsed the actions of Abdullah bin Jahash radiallahu anhu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala approved the ijtihad that Abdullah bin Jahash did, and the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam reversed his position. And the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went and he took the confiscated merchandise and he applied the rules of distribution on it. Until then, the Rasulullah said, I want nothing to do with it. You do with it whatever you want. Wait, Allah will tell us what to do. You hang on to it. I am not touching it. So the Rasulullah changed his opinion based on this ayah. So yes, this ayah had a significant impact. And also then the Muslims stopped criticizing that group. The rest of the Muslims were not very forgiving to these people. Yeah, it appeared to be an obvious violation. But by the way, in the rules of Ghazawat, in the rules of armed conflict in Islam, you only preserve the sacred months for those who preserve it against you. If somebody is shooting at me, I go, well, it's still Rajab, I can't shoot back. It doesn't work like that. See what I'm saying? If a group is engaged in armed conflict against Islam, and if they continue their aggressive actions inside sacred months, the Muslims have the right to defend themselves in those sacred months. It's very clear. Okay? So this is not a unilateral, we are going to chain our hands. It doesn't work like this. But now let me ask a question, because we will study the ayah and there are several components in this ayah. But let me ask the question, what are some lessons we can learn? What could have been done differently? Or what other lessons can we as a community learn from this very interesting Ghazwatul Nakhla incident?
Making that ijtihad based on circumstances was the right thing to do, even though if you look at the way the rules go, if it is a Rajab, you will be like, you'll be saying, okay, maybe it is Rajab, so I shouldn't be fighting. But they fight because they think this is the right time to hit them. And the intention was clear to hit them, even though
their instructions were don't engage the enemy. You realize they violated the instructions of the Rasulullah, yes or no?
Yes.
In the Battle of Uhud, when the Muslims violated these instructions, very bad things happened.
Like Allah turns something bad into something good,
Allah has the ability to do those things.
Right.
He can bring khair out of the shar. So let's look at the incident from the beginning to the end. The first thing you will notice how the Rasulullah, because it's not just about the people, I want us to learn about every aspect of it, right? So one of the things we learn from this expedition is that the Rasulullah chose his people with care. He chose people with specific qualifications, with specific attributes. In this case, we talked about why they had to be from the Quraysh tribe and the political implications of that. You see what I'm saying? And then he appointed one commander, but because of the circumstances, he switched and appointed to a different commander. See all those things? So this is an important part of preparation and planning for anything. You can't just show up and expect things to work. You have to plan for it. No, in general, the Rasulullah consulted. I don't know the specific consultation hadith on this question, but in general, the Rasulullah consulted. But he did not consult in the public masjid with 1,000 people. He consulted according to the needs of each specific situation. So some matters he consulted with 2 people, some matters he consulted with 20 people, some matters he consulted with hundreds of people. Right? So what was the case in this one, I don't know. But there's no reason to assume he did not consult. Okay? But the point I'm making here, point number 1, you see that even the Rasulullah ﷺ himself spent significant time planning in preparation of this event. That's point number 1. Do you see what I'm saying? Point number 2, the Rasulullah ﷺ maintained confidentiality of his operational plans. For some, I don't know why Muslims feel the need to shout on top of their lungs from the top of a mountain everything that they are thinking of doing. This is a very crazy idea. There is no basis in Islam for nonsense like this. It's like, one day we're going to do this and that. Brothers, take the first step, then let's talk.
Maybe they shout because they cannot do it.
Exactly. The shouting at the top of the lungs is a characteristic of people who have a track record of not delivering. When you see people shouting at the top of their lungs about things in the future, understand the statistical likelihood is they talk more than they, deliver. Or as they say in English, they say the bark is worse than the bite. Right? The Rasulullah ﷺ's case, the delivery is much more significant than the talk. This is why, and by the way, the early Sahaba had a clear ability to handle this reality. Not everybody has to know everything. Okay? Even someone like Abu Bakr radiallahu an did not know which direction they were going to go. He doesn't need to. He has no. By the way, this doesn't prove he's a bad Muslim or he's inferior. He's not. All it proves is that he is not part of that operational activity. He doesn't have to be in everything. Yeah, it's protection for him, it's protection for the ummah, it's protection for the team. Everyone, it is good for everybody. So this idea, because like, look, we are in favor of transparency. Correct. You see this concept, right? But nowadays we have this very dangerous tendency among some Muslims. Oh brother, what are you hiding? If you won't tell me, then that means something evil is going on here. No. I don't have to tell everybody everything. But within the realm of meaning, the realm of operations, we do have to do shura. So for example, it is very logical for a person who lives, and this is their main masjid, for that person to want to know the specific details about the price of the air conditioner and how we're going to fix it, what was the cost, because they are part of this discussion and the fundraiser time in Ramadan. Someone not from this community is not going to donate, has nothing to do with it, he just wants to talk. Brother, this is not your business. Go back home and go to sleep. This is better for Islam. Go back to sleep. Do you see this concept that not everything has to be on our website? I don't have to put up everything. Right? Only things that by putting on the website adds value, then we put it on. If that makes sense, right? So by the way, this is a very important lesson. You learn this from the Seerah. So not new advanced management techniques. No. It is old stuff. From the Quran and Sunnah, you get this lesson. What else can we learn about how the Rasulullah handled this? He gave very clear, explicit instructions. So lesson number 3. The instructions were very, very specific. Go there, open this letter. The letter says, go there, do this. Observe. Okay? What else can we learn?
He became angry when
Yeah, you're jumping to the end. There are many steps in the middle. What else can we learn here?
Playing with the rules. So did not violate the rules. He respected the rules, even though
Before we get to Abdullah bin Jahash in a minute, there's one more thing I want to talk about.
He said that whoever wants to participate should participate.
The voluntary participation. Okay? This is an important component of forming teams. Okay? I cannot come at you with a gun or a weapon. Things don't work like that. At the end of the day, even in an employment capacity, the best corporate leaders are people who convince their people to do things instead of command them. By the way, the convincing is way more powerful than the coercion. Even if I have the power over somebody, and I can grab their neck and do something, that only lasts as long as I'm grabbing. But if you convince them, it's a lot more powerful and a lot more effective and a lot more longer lasting. It's a very important leadership quality that the Rasulullah ﷺ has. Right? Nowadays you have advanced leadership quality MBA seminars that talk about these things. We used to have this in the Seerah from before. Okay? You could have a Harvard case study on this point, just that one point. I'm sure there are several Harvard case studies on that point. That you cannot command, commanding is less effective than convincing. And as you saw in this case, not a single person withdrew, not even one. They were being sent to a dangerous, uncomfortable mission. Now let's go to the case of the commander. Abdullah bin Jahash, may Allah be pleased with him. Okay? So let's analyze his actions. The first of his actions you will see is that he did a very good job of leading and convincing his men. He said, you guys can all leave, but as for me, I am looking for Shahada, so I'm going in this direction. And he led by example. So he's not saying, I command you to go. He's saying, I am going, I wish you would come with me. Good leaders are like that, they lead by example. Okay, so.
That's an invitation for them to follow.
Yeah, an invitation for them to follow him. So he led by example and he convinced them to follow him. He also had a role in this. Right? So then they faithfully followed the instructions. This also is a good lesson we learn, that they obeyed the instructions they received. Then it came a circumstance where they had to make a decision. And what did they do in the matter of making the decision?
They let one person decide, right? The leader.
They had shura. They talked among themselves. And at the end of the discussion in the shura, a decision was made. The end of the day, the decision is made by the commander. He made and the men followed it. Even in this there is good. Imagine what would have happened if in this army of 10, half of them followed and half of them did not follow. What would have happened? Would have been much worse. Yes or no? So again, you see, they did make a mistake. We're going to talk about their mistake in a minute. But before we talk about their mistakes, just realize that they have done 4 things correctly already. Yes or no? Now, in their ijtihad, they made a wrong decision. Have you heard the hadith about ijtihad? Anyone knows the hadith of ijtihad?
Intention is right, even though your action is wrong, but you got some.
So the Rasulullah ﷺ told us, whoever makes ijtihad with the right intention, go ahead. You were going to say.
With the right intention, always the outcome is right.
No, that's not what the hadith does not say. The outcome is right. The hadith says, If he reaches the wrong conclusion, Allah will reward him once for his ijtihad. If he reaches the right conclusion, Allah will reward him twice. In any case, there is khair in it. That doesn't mean the decision is right. It is possible through ijtihad you came to the wrong decision. The decision is wrong. It's possible.
Yeah, but they were between a rock and a hard place. With the limited resources,
Sure, they were between a rock and a hard place. I don't deny that.
and they waited, to make their decision.
But at the end of the day, did they obey or disobey the clear, explicit instructions of the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? They disobeyed. It's a fact. We cannot somehow talk ourselves out of that. Black and white, yes or no. The Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, don't, they did. Now they had very good reasons for why they did it. But
They already had instructions not to do it. So how did
because the instructions were not explicit and did not cover, it was explicit but did not cover every circumstance. So in their understanding, based on the actions that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had been doing before and later on continued doing, they assumed it was time to make the attack. They assumed that the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is preparing for an attack. They assume that the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is only collecting this information to attack this caravan, and the caravan is significantly further away than where we anticipated intercepting it. So we don't have time to send message to the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, bring back troops and come. And furthermore, we assume there would be many more armed guards protecting the caravan. Turns out there are 3. We can take it. They assume the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's desire for information only setting is so that he can protect this army. They assume there will be 20 armed guards and 10 of us cannot do this. We have to go back, send information. There is enough time. We assemble people, we bring them back. It makes sense. This is the ijtihad they did.
The speed of the caravan, maybe it is moving slow. So
Yeah, caravans move a lot slower than cavalry. The horses gallop. The caravans have to go at the speed of the slowest thing in the caravan. You see what I'm saying? So they assumed that they were going to intercept the caravan here, they would deliver the message, they would come back and catch it back here. Instead of catching the caravan here, they caught it here. And if it had more soldiers, they'd be like, oh, okay, we see the wisdom of why he told us not to engage. But there are only 3. You see what, so you can see their logic. So it's not like they began by saying, let us disobey the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. No, they're trying to do the right thing here. You see what I'm saying?
and from the past experience, they were just taking the caravan down.
Correct, correct.
So that it was like a notion in their mind that we are there to just take it.
Now here is the other lesson I want us to learn. When you are an operational leader of a project that affects the Muslims, your decisions can negatively affect people that have nothing to do with you. Did the actions of this team had a negative effect on people like Abu Bakr and Umar who have nothing to do with these people now? They had no part in this decision. Did it negatively affect them? Yes or no? So it's something you have to understand. That I could literally be sitting here in Blaine, Minnesota, acting for this masjid, and because I am part of this organization, my actions can have an effect in California. It is important for the project leaders and the project workers to understand that they cannot just act according to what they see. Their actions have consequences on everybody else. I cannot say, well, I'm my organization and my board said I will do this, so I'm going to do it, we don't care what happens to you. It doesn't work like that. Actions taken by that Muslim group affects this Muslim group. Is that a lesson we can learn from this incident? Right? And by the way, Here is another very important lesson to learn out of this ijtihad. Do ijtihad, understand that in ijtihad there are two outcomes, right and wrong. Wrong is also an outcome that happens. Okay? By the way, the PR, public relations, consequences of actions are also significant. So these are just words, they don't affect us, they affect you. You see that? You can't just say, oh, these are just words, we don't care. You should care about the words. The words have consequences. Make sense? Now they come back to the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. What is the behavior of the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? His initial behavior is what? He sought protection in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from having made a mistake. So when you see the outcomes of your actions, the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam consulted a higher authority. So I need to know, was my action halal or haram? This will determine everything else. Even the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, suspended animation. I need to get the answers from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Was this halal or haram? Is that answer changes everything. The answer is, it's not like, oh, it's another word. No. If it is halal, how we interact will be very different than if it was haram. Even ex post facto, even after the fact. An event has occurred with or without my full control. So look, I'm the executive director. But there are hundreds of people doing things in the name of this organization. I am not in full control of all of them. No one person can be. You see what I'm saying? We have multiple centers, we have hundreds of programs, hundreds of people doing thousands of things. Any one of those things can affect all the rest of you. Any one of those actions can be so bad. See what I'm saying? So now something occurred. Now what? The first and the most important question, what does Islam say about this action? Is it halal or haram? This will determine everything. Do you see what I'm saying? And then here is another very important lesson you learn from the project team. They awaited the decision. They didn't take weapons and start killing other Muslims because, oh, you disagreed with us. They awaited. We find out what the decision is. And here is another major lesson. Lesson number 11 we can learn from the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that based on the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam changed his position. You see that? Yeah, he's not a territorial leader. It's okay. This is the decision, then I accept that. Do you know how many leaders cannot do that? So look at the greatness of this leader. This is why he is the best leader. Questions, comments, thoughts?
You said when they came back with the news, he had to consult or ask Allah for what to do to make a decision. Was actually going and taking confiscating these caravans, was that allowed for him? Was that
Yeah, the confiscation and the seizing the wealth of the enemies who were at war against Islam was already permitted. Okay? The question was not they took the wealth. This was not bothering the Rasulullah. What bothered the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the attack in the sacred month. And the wealth is a consequence of that action. So if that action is wrong, the outcome of that action is also wrong. If that action is approved, then the outcome of the action is approved. There are only two positions here. If the action is approved, then that wealth belongs to the state of Medina. It is to be distributed according to the standard rules. If that action is wrong, then the wrongdoers have to undo their action and return it back. Yes or no? There is no middle ground. So the initial position of the Rasulullah ﷺ is, I think this action is wrong, I don't want to take it, and I'm going to get the correct direction on what to do here.
And the reason is because there is some blood, some people got killed.
Well, even if people had not been killed, you cannot attack in the month of in a sacred month. You cannot attack. You cannot launch a unilateral attack in a month where fighting is prohibited. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying this is not a unilateral attack. This attack is in response to other things they have done.
You mentioned that they were not given the command to attack. They just were given the order to follow and just to give the intelligence of jihad.
So confiscated also, if I'm confident that there will not be any fight there, even that is not allowed in the sacred month?
This is a very specific fiqhi question. My assumption is the answer is no, but I'm not an expert in this question. But that sounds like an attack to me. What you have described in using nice words, that's an attack. Yes or no? Someone came and took away your car, you would feel attacked? Yeah. So that's why I think it's an attack.
Also, when you get attacked, he's gonna try to fight you.
In general, that's a human reaction, right? In general, people fight their attackers. What would you expect will happen if you try to take away somebody's camels and his wealth?
Is there
Yes.
any history for this scenario that we can?
Yeah, there are several incidents occurred where the Muslims took it without fighting. That happened. But even just because there is no fight, that's still an attack. In Fath Makkah, swords did not clash, but that was an attack, yes or no? Just because swords did not clash doesn't mean it was not a fight.
So this was the first taking of caravan in the sacred month.
I don't think anything happened in other sacred months, but this is the first time where blood was shed. You see what I'm saying? So from that perspective, many scholars described this as the first battle of Islam. But many other scholars say no, it was the Battle of Badr. Of course, the Battle of Badr was much more significant, and inshallah one of these days we will also study the history of that battle. Make sense? Any last questions? We're at 5 minutes past. Go ahead.
The last, when Rasulullah said that no matter how I will just, I have nothing to do with it before I came. At that time, even though it was very profitable, because they brought all the money and everything, but still with that, what I learned, that you have to follow what Islam says.
Actually, I agree, this is lesson number 12. Just because it's profitable doesn't mean we can do it. You got to find out if it's halal or haram. The fact that you get money out of it is irrelevant. If it is not halal, the fact you get more money, it doesn't matter. You can't do stuff like that, right? That's a very important lesson. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad. I did not think of raising that, but that's a very important lesson from this entire ma'araka. So let's end it here. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. جزاكم الله خيرا.